We're getting into the good stuff now. We've talked about the 80s. We've talked about the cartoons, the culture, the how way everything was just like a big cultural soup you stewed in. Like wrestling was big back then, renting VCR tapes. For example, Mr. T, he was on the A-Team TV show, and then he got into wrestling, I think, somehow. I think he fought Hulk Hogan at one time. And then the actual TV wrestling got into, like, there was a cartoon version of, like, Hulk Hogan and his Amazing Friends, or that's Spider-Man. But, like, there was a Hulk Hogan cartoon, right? Then you had your Mr. T cereal. Then you would get, like, a Mr. T lunchbox. Then you get, like, a WWE Trapper Keeper. And everything was kind of, I guess it's kind of the same today with, like, SpongeBob's everywhere and Rick and Morty's everywhere and Adventure Time and things like that. They kind of become a meme and they get merchandised a lot. But there was, seems like there was more of it back then because there was more stuff. Maybe just because I'm not in school anymore. But anyway, this was starting to get to where I was getting into computers. So let me set the stage for you. What is that TV show I always talk about? It's on Netflix. One about the early computing days of Sinclair. I think they call it something else in the TV show. It doesn't matter. My dad had this friend, Kenny. He worked with him. And I think he was trying to talk my dad into buying a computer. So we went over to his house, right? And we go down to his basement. His basement looked like one of those old rooms full of computers. And, like, I think he had a fancy keyboard, too, a synthesizer or whatever. And he had this computer, and I was like, I've never seen a mouse before, right? And I picked up this mouse and started moving around. He had, like, MS Paint or something. I made this squirrely kind of a shape. And I was like, oh, my God, that kind of looks like a ninja's head. And I drew like a thing for the eyes, you know, and I drew like a little hand come up and I threw a ninja star. And I'm like, that looks fucking dope. Imagine if I could do that all the time. And this guy, Kenny, he was explaining to my dad how the internet worked. And what he told him was, like, we're going to use Netscape Navigator. And that's actually a browser. That's not the internet. But we're talking about dial-up connections. And he was saying, like, yeah, Netscape is like a canoe or a rowboat. He said you can get anywhere in the ocean with a rowboat, but it's not as fast as if you had a big ship. So it's slower, but it'll get you anywhere you want to go. So he kind of explained it like that. I mean, Netscape was pretty big back in the day. And then you had all these early search engines like Dogpile. And we used this one. It was like 9 search engines in one, Pingu or something like that. It had like Yahoo on it and Alta Vista, a bunch of other search engines, right? And a lot of stuff back then, there wasn't a lot of graphics. You may have seen some early websites of GeoCities and Angel Fire's pages, stuff like that, but chat rooms were pretty big, but they weren't like, okay, there's chat rooms. I'm so old school with this. There wasn't even like live chats, like you'd see new text pop up constantly. You would type a thing, and then you have to refresh the page, like a message board, sort of. People would see your message, and then they would type stuff, and you'd have to refresh the page and see what they wrote. And then there was this thing called, it was kind of similar to emotes now, it was called actions. You type /action, and then like chair was one of them. And this was supposed to simulate like you're in a bar, and you take a chair and you smash it over somebody's back. So people are always smashing chairs over people's back in these old chat rooms, right? And then there was this Phil Donahue episode where they were interviewing this man and woman who met on a chat room and they got married. And they're trying to explain it to Phil Donahue or the audience or whatever about how it works. And he was like, yeah, we were breaking chairs over each other's backs in this chat room. And like nobody knew what the fuck they were talking about. It was so dope to have been there in that time. And like, I've seen this my whole life. Like, I've been ahead of the curve. And I've seen like these news stations like, what is the internet? What is this World Wide Web everyone's talking about? And nobody knows what it is. And it's like, everybody's just behind. And you're ahead of them. And you feel like you're smarter than everybody else. Which we were. People that were into computers and gaming back then. So then, I think my dad buckled down and got a computer. We got the dial-up, you know how that sounds, the sound it makes. 56K, I think we had. It wasn't a 28.8, it was a 56K. Pretty good stuff, right? We got a custom-built computer, and I started learning about all the parts, and eventually learned how to build my own computer. But back then, the big game of the day was Wolfenstein 3D, and everything was shareware. You just give people games like on CDs. I used to have like Entertainment Weekly magazine or electronic entertainment, like E3. You know, E3 came from a magazine called Electronic Entertainment something, I think, and then I think that became E3. And they would have like weird CDs in the back of them. Some of it was kind of like pornographic. I think Prince made a CD where you could like tour his house and there'd be like chicks on the bed and stuff. There was like live action CD-ROMs kind of got. Like the early days of CD-ROMs were weird. Like you had those Mad Dog McCree kind of motion captured real video things, and then what was the other one? Ground Zero Texas. There was a bunch of kind of games like that, but there were some that were like porn based too. Hexen, I played a lot of that, and Doom. And these were games that were small enough you could put them on a floppy disk. You could take them to school and then stick them in your school computers and play them at school if you're sneaky. Now, a lot of people talk about the Oregon Trail game, and I never really played it, maybe like once or twice, but mostly I was playing like Carmen Sandiego. There was this game, it's pretty good for learning about geography. On the school computers, they had Carmen Sandiego and Ski Free. But then I also got into IRC chat rooms. Now that was where the early days of torrenting kind of got their start, because it wasn't torrents back then. It was people just had FTP servers, and you use Qt FTP program to get into their servers and just type these commands to have it send you the files, and you just download it directly. But you'd have to get into a secret channel. Like there was one called Dreamwares that I was in. Anything back then was called Wares, W-A-R-E-Z. So you had apps with a Z, you had games with a Z, and then you had apps and games. What else was there? Music maybe or something like. So you'd change directories. You'd figure out like, oh, this guy's got a bunch of apps. Let me go download Dragon Naturally Speaking. It can like type out whatever I say or stuff like that. You know, that was a big one. I don't know if they had Photoshop back then. I think it was before Photoshop. But my friend Tom's parents were divorced, right? And sometimes he would stay at his dad's house, and sometimes stay at his mom's house. When he stayed at his dad's house, his dad had a little mini house, like a guest house on the side of his house. And my friend Tom would stay there by himself, so we had the whole place to ourselves. And we would make like Hot Pockets, no, not Hot Pockets, pizza rolls. We would make pizza rolls, and we would play like Zork and Myst and Mad Dog and games like that on his PC. And then my friend Paul, he got a freaking brand new Packard Bell. He's the one that got me into Dungeons and Dragons and all the Dragonlance novels. I borrowed off him and read them. And he got this Packard Bell, and I think that's when I got my own computer, or I upgraded because his was so nice. But we got into, that was like probably freshman year, so I met Tom and Paul. Probably knew Paul longer because he lived near me. We used to ride the bus together, and then we got all of us got into comic books. Wizard magazine came out for the first time, and like I want to say 91, 92, because I graduated in 96, and it was like maybe 93 or 4. I think I was about a freshman in high school when Wizard Comics came out, and you could kind of learn to draw comic book characters in it. That was pretty dope. And then, I don't know how I did this, but I learned to hack. Probably just from spending so much time in chat rooms, because it was all like Linux based. And when I played Tribes 2, it was Linux based too. You have to learn to write a lot of commands, you get into DOS. But I hacked the school computer one time. I was in this program. It was kind of like a early job kind of preparation, kind of, what do they call those classes? I don't remember. But most people would like leave and go to vocational school to do this and like learn a trade. I was like, I just wanted to get it done to graduate and get my credits or whatever, right? So I was like, I'm going to work in the library because there's computers in the library. I can play solitaire all day, right? So I'm working in the library, and I started getting into the DOS, into the roots of the whole network of the whole school's computer somehow. I don't know how I did it. It completely blows my mind that I did it. I don't even remember how I figured out how to send like a message to all the computers in the whole school. It didn't say that it would send a message. It just kind of was vague, and I just like, somehow I knew it would work. I don't even know. But there was this scandal. My biology teacher, and if you remember from the previous video, my intro, where I was talking about how the baseball team were bullying me in the biology class. As a biology teacher, he would always come into class for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then he would leave. And you never fucking see him again. He would just be gone. So then they could fucking abuse me and then bully me and shit. So I didn't like this. And then there was a scandal. Like, we heard that he was fucking his students. Because he was like the football coach, right? And supposedly some of these popular girls in class were fucking him. So I sent a message about that whole scandal to all the computers. And as soon as I sent this message, the computer started beeping really loud. And like, I was with this other guy, too. This other guy was watching me. So I like shut it off real quick. And I was like trying to explain to him what was going on. We just kind of walked away, acting like nothing's happening. Of course, everybody in the library was looking at us. So then somebody come and got me. Somehow they figured out it was me. And they made me go to the office. And they punished me by changing my job site or whatever to one of the vocational school ones, I think. That's what happened. So when I got over to the ones at the vocational school, they had computers too, because this was like a typing class or something I was in too. And I ended up fucking with that computer, I think on the last day of school. This was like an old Novell system. It wasn't even Windows, right? And you could change the settings of the colors if you wanted the text to be like a certain color or the background to be a certain color. And the last day of school, I changed them all to black. So it would look like the monitor wasn't working even when it was. So you turn it on and you see black on black. You can't read anything. It looks like the monitor's just dead. So that was pretty dope. A couple of times I hacked the computers at school. And I used to like, Mom would have me fix her friends' computers. And I was kind of known as the guy that would, like, basically you go to somebody's house and there's nothing really wrong with their computer. They just got a bunch of junk that they downloaded. Or their mouse, like, they didn't have optical mouse back then. They had those little balls, and you have to take the ball out and clean it, clean the little rollers on it, and everything would be working great. And like, wow, how'd you fucking do that? That's amazing. You fucking had gunk in your shit. It's not a big deal. And I used to be on the academic team, like the quick recall, like a quiz show kind of a thing, right? And we'd go on field trips, and then like one time we went to the mall, and they had an Aladdin's castle. I don't know if that's still a thing, but it's like a big arcade. You'd have tokens and shit. Kind of got into arcade games like that. Also, like Walmart, I think, had a Super Street Fighter 2 game. Got really into that. I wanted to get a Super NES. And Pizza Hut had a Samurai Showdown 4. Yeah. I was playing Bossero a lot. And Ukyo. Getting into some arcade shit. Fucking good times. And you go on, I think at the mall, they had like a record store, but it was cassette tapes back then. So everybody got some cassette tapes. You listen to your fucking Walkmans on the bus on the way home. It's fucking sick time, dude. So then, this was like sophomore year, because there was older kids ahead of me. I remember in the academic team, there was this one guy, he was like super smart, right? And he was taking AP biology and AP French class, all the AP classes, right? He could speak French almost. I think one time he even took home a dead cat because it was like part of his biology class. He had to he knew like there's 212 bones in the human body or something. He had to like name them all. He knew like all the muscles, and he had to like dissect this cat and like separate all the muscles out. And people were doing like some high level shit in high school back then. I don't know if they even do that anymore. Like you could get chemistry sets in elementary school back then, but now they think you're gonna make a bomb and be a terrorist. It's weird. Things have changed. So, then when I got into like junior year, I think I could have gotten my driver's license in, but I kind of didn't. I kind of waited a year longer than everybody else did. I don't know why. I guess I just didn't. I kept wanting to ride the bus or didn't want to pay for gas or something. But then once I finally got my driver's license, dude, I started driving Double D to school. I'd drive my brother to school, and then like when we get to Double D's, where I picked her up at, I'd make him get in the back so she'd sit in the front, just for like not even a quarter of a mile to the school, because she didn't want to like be riding in the back like some chauffeur or something, right? Plus it was nice to look at her ass, because she had a nice ass. She could get out, whatever. So then I kind of got the idea like people would leave for lunch. If you had a driver's license, you could go to Sonic and get some fucking jalapeno poppers. And it's like, wow, you could do this all the time. And it was like a certain point when you're growing up, you start thinking about money in the future in your life. I think on one of these field trips, too, we went to like a McDonald's, and I was like, well, you can get a Big Mac and a fries and a Coke for like $5. I mean, if you only ate 2 meals a day, which is pretty reasonable, you could live on like $10 a day and 7 days a week. That's $70 a week. You wouldn't have to make that much money to just live off of McDonald's if you wanted to. You start thinking about things like, how am I going to make it in the future when I get a job? How much money am I going to need? And then you got to factor in rent and all this other stuff. But like, shit's starting to get real. You're starting to drive cars. You're starting to be responsible. And you start thinking about life and the future. And like I said before, every part of my life I had this crazy idea that was really bad. It was a really bad idea, and it didn't work out very good. So eventually, I got my pickup truck. This was after high school, I guess. But I had this crazy idea. Like when you wanted to move, or you had to get somebody something for a present for birthdays or Christmas, you needed a box, you could go behind the grocery store and you could get a box. And then we had this Walmart got put in. I'm like, well, there's all these boxes out in front of Walmart all banded up. They're recycling those, right? You can just recycle boxes? So I started thinking about it, like, Walmart's making all this money recycling these boxes, and behind the grocery store you can get boxes for free. So I'm like, let me just take my pickup truck and put a bunch of boxes in it, take them home, and then I'll cut them up with a box cutter, and I'll just recycle these boxes that are free, and I'll just make free money. But I didn't figure out the cost of gas, and that you can't fit a whole lot of boxes in a truck because they're boxes. They're not collapsed down. They're just big boxes, and then the air catches them, and then some of them blow out of the back of your truck. And I was like, this is a good idea. This is fine. I'm down here in the basement cutting these boxes, listening to X-Files on tape, audiobook. And then I realized this is a horrible, horrible idea. I wasn't going to make any money. So I had to cancel that. I don't know what we did with those boxes. We just burned them or something, but that was my dumb idea for that time. And that concludes T2, the high school years.